What's going on, everyone? So, Booth, the GM of the Denver Nuggets, recently said, "Our guys are tired. It's going to be hard to repeat. But if everything is optimized, we should win 3 or 4 titles." Now, obviously, the Denver Nuggets won the NBA championship last season, and they fully intend to try to build this contender. They fully intend to win multiple NBA championships. I mean, every title contending team, that's the goal, right? You don't want to just win one. You want to win every year if you can. And the goal is to try to win as many as you can. They did lose Bruce Brown. They did lose Jeff Green. And I do think that those are going to be huge hits to Denver. I don't think it makes them from like a contender to all of a sudden they're scratching for a play-in spot or anything. But I do think they're going to feel the effects of those guys leaving. But here's the thing. The NBA is trying very hard to keep that fairness throughout the league and try to make it so there are no more of those like warrior dynasties and things like that. And very likely there would never be that again, just simply on the fact that like Kevin Durant going to the Warriors was a very just unique circumstance where all of the stars basically aligned in order for that to happen. Like that wasn't, even then, that was something that was nearly impossible to happen, but they were able to figure it out. It just kind of fell in their lap, right? So, unless some rare recursion ends up happening, it's very likely that we'll never see that kind of dynasty, at least anytime soon. There will always be, at some point, whether it's through the draft, you get 4 or 5 guys that just, you hit well on the draft. Like, I'm not saying that there won't ever be a dynasty team or anything like that, or you just get that player. Like, what if Victor Wembanyama does become the greatest player ever, and he's just like this ridiculous star, and you don't even need a super team. You just need a solid enough team under the parameters of the new NBA to now go and win 3, 4, 5, 6 championships, right? That could very well be a possibility, but we haven't had a repeat champion since the Kevin Durant Warriors, right? Since then, you had the Toronto Raptors, then you had the Lakers, then you had the Bucks, and then you had the Warriors again, and then you had, the Denver Nuggets. So like you've had this disparity throughout the course of the last like handful of seasons, and very likely that'll be the case again this year, right? And that was like a super duper team. It literally took that entire team falling apart in order for the Toronto Raptors to win that, because if everyone was healthy, the Raptors weren't beating the Warriors, right? But when you lose Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Steph Curry are all hurt, like it's really hard to pull that out, right? When basically your big four are all essentially either out or dealing with some significant injuries. That's usually how things end up happening. And that's winning an NBA championship, period, right? Even through all the Warriors championships, there were just dominoes that fell in their favor. Like Denver, even when they won, there were dominoes that fell in their favor. Like, it's just how it goes, right? And, a lot of it comes down to who are the healthiest, right? Like, who kind of has that lucky bounce when you need it, right? It's just sometimes like Denver this year, it almost just seemed like they were destined to win it this year. It was like everything that could possibly go right for them went right? Even in like the Lakers series, those games were tight, super close. And you saw like Jokic hit some like miracle shot. And it's like, man, that's like a once in a, 100-year shot. And then it's like, oh, Jamal Murray just hit another one back to back. Like, it's just like, again, you sometimes have those things that just go your way. And it's just, you have all these teams now fighting for dominance, right? You see teams like the Phoenix Suns, and they're about as close to a super team as you could get. But again, it was a unique circumstance. They have Chris Paul, right? Bradley Beal's available, and Bradley Beal's the only player with a no trade clause. So he literally has all of the say in order to go and pick and choose his destination, right? So it's very likely we might not see no trade clauses anymore. And not just that, the NBA has gotten a lot stricter with these rules and trying to keep it to where every team essentially has 2 stars now, rather than building those Miami Heat teams, building those Warrior Durant teams, right? Now, will the Phoenix Suns be that super powerhouse team? I don't think so. right? Like, I'm not saying that they won't win an NBA championship, but I think, you're looking at this team and it's like they have their issues, they have their flaws, right? Like the Warriors, like you saw the Warriors, they were literally unbeatable by today's NBA standards. Like, as long as those guys were healthy, nobody was beating them, right? Like the Suns are very beatable, right? Like you look at like Boston, they're very beatable. The Bucks are very beatable. And you have these teams that are all trying to kind of find that loophole and find those ways to kind of get through to build these contending teams. But you see so much just like, especially like in the West, right? You have several teams that could easily come out of the NBA or make it out of the West to the NBA Finals, right? Where the East, it's a little more up front, right? It's kind of like you got Milwaukee, you got Boston, no particular order, right? And then everyone else is kind of like there, right? Like you could have that surprise. Like last year, Miami came through and they were able to make the NBA Finals, right? Like Philly, if James Harden is fully bought in, like I could see them having a chance, but also James Harden is very likely to be traded at some point this year. And even then, like how long is he patient before they implode, right? Like the East is a little more cut and dry, in my opinion. It's just kind of like more likely than not, unless some, crazy event happens, it's probably Boston or the Milwaukee Bucks that make it out of the Eastern Conference. But even then, both those teams have their issues, right? Both of those teams are kind of top heavy, right? Like, especially Boston. Like, you can make an argument Boston has the best 1 through 5, like, starting unit in the league, right? I'm not saying that they have the best player at every position, but I'm talking about like 1 through 5. You look at that order and it's just like, okay, like they may have the best 1 through 5. Like every other team has some type of flaw or hole in their starting 5, right? But the drop off is massive, right? Milwaukee, they got Damian Lillard. That should be great, but there's questions, right? Are they going to be able to work it out and kind of be the 1A, 1B? Right? Giannis has said he's going to let, Dame handle point guard duties. He's the point guard. He's going to let him have the ball in his hand. And he's going to try to make that adjustment. But it's easy to say that until, you get to the end of games and games are tight and, now what? Right? Does Giannis look to try to take over down the stretch and Dame kind of becomes an afterthought? Does Dame look to take over down the stretch and Giannis kind of becomes an afterthought? Like, there's still questions defensively, like how are they going to hold up, right? Brook Lopez, Giannis are incredible defenders. They're both, the anchors for that team. But now Dame is, he's a liability on the defensive end. Chris Middleton, he's going to have to pick it up defensively, right? Like, and I'm not saying that they won't. I'm not saying they can't. But it's just you can make an argument for like 7 teams to win the NBA championship this year. Usually, it comes down to like 2 or 3, right? Like, again, back in the Warrior days, it was like, okay, it's the Warriors and no one else, right? Maybe Houston gets hot and lucky and they end up pulling it out, but, chances are they're probably not beating them, right? And it's like, even like last year, it was like, okay, like there's like 3 teams that are probably winning it, right? You did have the surprise again in Miami, but like what happens if Giannis doesn't get hurt? Does Miami actually beat Milwaukee? I don't know. I personally don't think so. I think if like Giannis was okay from start to finish, Boston or the Bucks go up 2-0 and that becomes a completely different series, right? Because they won game 2 without him. So if Giannis is good that whole game, then they probably win game 1. So I don't know. It's just it's one of those things we'll never know for sure, right? But I just think the teams winning, back-to-back or three-peats or anything like that. I mean, the last three-peat was what? The Lakers? Right? Like, because, Miami didn't three-peat. Even the Warriors didn't three-peat. Right? Three-peating is extremely hard in the league. Right? There's only so many teams that have ever done that. Even like the Spurs dynasty didn't do it. They had stretches where they won like every other year, right? And it's just I don't think the days of, a team winning 3 or 4 championships in like a 5-year span, I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, at least for a while, right? Like, again, like, the Thunder, right? What if Chet ends up evolving into, a top 10 player or something like that? And then you got SGA, who's another like top 10 player. And then, one of these, couple of these other young guys that they have. And then they have a bunch of draft picks on top of it. And there will be a team that ends up having something go crazy, right? Again, the the San Antonio Spurs, right, with Victor Wembanyama. What if he really is the best player in the league by far, and they get another guy or two, and it's just like the two of them are the best duo in the league by far, and it's just like, as long as they're healthy, they're winning. Like, of course that could happen. The Lakers have a really good young group, right? Anthony Davis is locked up long term. LeBron's eventually going to leave, whether it's this year or next year. But it's the Lakers, right? Like, so what other star ends up coming? At some point, the Lakers are probably going to get another star. So could they win, a couple championships in a couple years, right? There's definitely that possibility. But I think the days of like a dynasty, right? Like, you look at those teams like the Spurs, the Warriors, the Lakers, the Celtics, right? Like the Bulls, all those teams, like every like handful of years or whatever, it feels like we have a dynasty, right? It seems like every, handful of years you got, that team that wins 2, 3, 4, 5 championships, LeBron and the Heat, stuff like that. And it's just like, all right, like this team is clearly that they're going to win multiple championships in the next few years, right? Now, there's arguments that you can, again, like you look at the Bucks, you look at the Celtics, right? Like those teams are going to be together for a couple years, like Denver, Phoenix, right? Even the Lakers, I think, can win an NBA championship this year, right? And if they win it this year, it's not out of the realm of possibility they win it next year. Any of those teams that I mentioned, right? So there's several teams that no one would be shocked if they won the next 2 or 3 NBA championships, but it's so hard to win multiple NBA championships regardless. And now the NBA is trying to make it to where it's a different team every year, and it's harder to kind of build these crazy teams. So to me now, it's just going to be who can build the deepest, most reliable team. Those are the teams that are probably going to have the most success. And then the 2 stars that go along with it, right? So, I don't know. Time will tell. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass a question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you think the era of dynasties are over? Do you think, like, no, some team will come along, whoever that is? Again, I'm not saying it'll never happen. I just don't think it happens anytime soon. I really don't. But we'll see. Time will tell. Anyway, let me know how you feel down in the comments.